I hereby proclaim that from here on out, under the Jim Crow laws, that blacks and whites will be separated by law. The two races are to remain separate but equal. There should be separate schooling systems, separate neighborhoods, separate restrooms, and pre-designated separate sections of other public places.
The Jim Crow laws may have stated that men would be separate but equal, but clearly that was not the case. The white society displayed widespread discrimination and mistreatment towards blacks throughout this time period. They were not allowed to drink from the same water fountain. They were not allowed to eat at the same diners or use the same bathrooms. White schools were much nicer and had much better materials, whereas the schools for black people received old, worn-down materials from the white schools. On December 1st, 1955, Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat for a white man in the front of a bus. This was one of the first displays of the civil rights movement, and it ignited other movements, such as the Montgomery bus boycott and sit-ins at restaurants. Parks was arrested for her actions, but it showed the world that the black population was beginning to stand up for themselves and fight for equal rights. You need to move.
No, I don't. I've had a long day and I was here first. I did not need to go.
I'm warning you. Get up right now.
Nope. I've had a long day and I will not move.
Ma'am, if you don't go to the back of the bus right now, I'm going to have to call the police.
Sir, I was here first and I am very tired. I will not move.
Yeah. I'm going to need some units down here.
That's our officer. She'll sit in the back and give up her seat. Miss, I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle. You're under arrest. No Negroes allowed to sit in the front in this case, sir. One thing they did to protest were sit-ins. Sit-ins were a type of protest where black demonstrators would sit in at white-only diners and ask for service. For hours on end, they refused to leave until they were served.
Excuse me, ma'am. Excuse me.
What?
Can we get a lunch menu, please?
We don't serve your kind here.
Ma'am, we have equal rights. We're gonna sit here till you serve us.
Well, you're not getting served.
These black demonstrators that participated in these sit-ins were often victims of harsh criticism and abuse. They were trained to accept the violence and refrain from violent retaliation. They used non-violent, non-cooperation methods in order to win the support of the public and gain attention from political leaders. It was a success in the end. Business owners lost service due to sit-ins, and eventually they were forced to appease the blacks and serve both races. What are you guys doing? Yeah, your kind doesn't belong here. You guys have to leave. Yeah, get out. Another important march was back in the spring of 1965, when the Southern Christian Leadership Conference led a group of about 600 people from Selma to Montgomery. The protesters intended to confront Governor George Wallace about the death of civil rights activist Jimmy Lee Jackson, who was shot during a protest by police. The marchers hoped to bring attention to Jackson's death in a non-violent way, as well as protest exclusion from voting. After crossing the Emmond Pettus Bridge, the marchers encountered a line of police officers blocking their path. An event called Bloody Sunday ensued, during which unarmed marchers were beaten and stunned with tear gas. 17 marchers were later hospitalized, and the event received national public attention.
We want freedom! We want freedom! We want freedom! We want! Don't go
any further. You're not allowed to go past this point. Move back. I'm demanding you.
We won't move until you listen.
We're not gonna listen, so move back. Don't take one more step. Get him! Perhaps one of the most effective forms of protests were the marches. The most famous march occurred in August of 1963, when over 200,000 people, both black and white, marched through Washington, D.C. In addition to various economic reforms, the protesters advocated for more effective and fair civil rights laws. At the end of their march, many thousands of people gathered around the Lincoln Memorial to hear Martin Luther King Jr. speak. There, he delivered his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. In this speech, King called for an end to racism and a new era of racial harmony in the United States.
I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. The Negro still is not free. The life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. The Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. The Negro is still languishing in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. So we have come here today to dramatize a shameful condition. But let us not wallow in the valley of despair. I say to you today, my friends, so even though we may face difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
The Civil Rights Act of 1964 was passed and signed on July 2nd, 1964 by President Lyndon B. Johnson. The act banned discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, and national origin in employment atmospheres and public accommodations. This was a huge win for the civil rights activists, but they were not done fighting. The protesters continued to fight against unfair laws restricting many black citizens the right to vote. When blacks attempted to vote, they were turned away by unfair literacy tests given out by voting officials. On August 6, 1965, President Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act of 1965 that suspended these literacy tests for black voters. Even though many laws were passed that made racial discrimination illegal in the U.S., discrimination was not totally eliminated. For many years, black people were still mistreated, but through the courageous acts of members of the civil rights movement, equality among the citizens began to improve, and in today's society, everyone receives equal rights.